How's it going, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback, and we are now looking at Amazing Spider-Man issue number 16. This issue came out in September of 1964. Now, as I recall in the last video that I showed of the Amazing Spider-Man series that we've been going through in issue number 15, I said that we were going to review the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 1, but when I went online to see the timeline of the Amazing Spider-Man series, it says that the Amazing Spider-Man Annual did not come out until after issue 16. They may have come out simultaneously, but according to the timeline, I'm going to stick to the timeline, and we're going to review issue 16 first. So this issue is a lot different compared to the other issues that we've looked at. We don't have any big menaces in this story. There's not like a big supervillains. Instead, we're looking at a whole group of villains, and it's the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime. Now, I can't recall when he made his first appearance. It may have been, it probably was in a different title. It was not Spider-Man. This is not his first appearance. And this is not Daredevil's first appearance either. Daredevil at this time had already come out onto the scene in 1964 with his first issue, and by this point I looked in the letters page and Daredevil number 3 has already come out. So this is overall probably his third or fourth appearance overall in comic books. Daredevil's third or fourth appearance. So that's pretty cool. We see the yellow and black costume, something that he wore before he switched to the red costume. So that's very, very, very cool. So we're going to be seeing an appearance of Daredevil today, and also how they fight off the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime. So the title of this issue, The Duel with Daredevil. Duel with Daredevil. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching, continue to watch. We're going to be looking at an exciting story today. So don't click away. And also, we need to just, give credit where credit is due. Like that's my famous saying that I always say in every video. So we just gotta I just gotta tell y'all, who wrote this issue. We have Stan Lee, we have Steve Ditko, and then Sam Rosen. Sometimes it's Art Simek. Most of the time it's Art Simek, but now we got Sam Rosen back on the lettering page. So pretty much the same crew as always have been writing and drawing these spectacular issues, and I have to say I have been enjoying and appreciating Steve Ditko's art more as I've been going through these reviews. Now let's get started. So we pick up the issue here with the first panel. It shows that Mary Jane is the topic of conversation right now. We have Aunt May talking to Peter Parker. And remember last issue, for the first time, Mary Jane's name is mentioned. Or maybe it's just Watson, but nothing less. We know that Mary Jane's name has been mentioned, and Aunt May is adamant to get Peter Parker to date Mary Jane. Remember, the Watsons are the Peter Parker and Aunt May's neighbors. So they live pretty much next door, maybe a house down from where they live. And so we learned from last issue that Aunt May is close friends with Mary Jane's aunt. Okay? So it's kind of similar where Mary Jane lives with her aunt as well. So that's very, very interesting here that we learn. But as far as I can tell you for this issue, Mary Jane does not make her appearance in this issue. Only her name is brought up. That's all I can say for right now. But now let's get rolling as to, the main story. And Peter Parker says up here, he says, I already have a date. I already have a girlfriend, and that's Betty Brant. He tries to tell Aunt May that he's been seeing Betty Brant, but Aunt May thinks that Mary Jane might be a better girl for Peter Parker. But we'll see on down the road. So we pick up the next scene here with a bunch of crooks. They look like they've stolen some money, and look who we just run into. We got Matt Murdock, of all people. He's out on the streets, and these crooks are about to run right into him. Now, Matt Murdock, we know he's the Daredevil. He could take care of these crooks, but Spider-Man does not know that this is Daredevil. No one knows who Daredevil is. Remember, Daredevil is new on the scene. And so Spider-Man comes down, takes care of these crooks, and Matt Murdock can hear everything about it. Remember, Matt Murdock has unique abilities. He can hear heartbeats. He can sense heartbeats, and he can detect if people are lying. He just has a keen hearing sensibility. Since his sense of sight is gone, everything else has pretty much enhanced. And so that's very unique to Daredevil and his powers. If you didn't know anything about Daredevil, that's one thing you need to know, is that he has a unique sense of hearing, and he uses his hearing to help him to see pretty much what's going on. So we see Matt Murdock switch to Daredevil, and he says that he's late to go see Foggy Nelson and Karen Page. There we go. And so those are the two main characters in the Daredevil magazine. If you watch the Netflix series, that's also, you'll learn those characters are very key to the series of Daredevil. So here they are. We got Karen Page and Foggy Nelson. Foggy Nelson and Matt Murdock, they work together. And we also know by this point that Karen Page has had some feelings towards Matt Murdock, and he does not want to go to this circus. That's what they're trying to convince him to go to. He doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to think that he's going for Karen Page. Because Karen Page, she shows some sympathy towards Matt Murdock because he's blind. But we see the big scheme between right now with the Ringmaster, and that is that he's going to commit the biggest crime in history. So that's what's that crime going to be? Well, we learned that in the past he fought the Hulk, but now he's going to do something that's going to capture the audience's attention. What could that be? Well, he's going to promise that Spider-Man's going to come. And so he promises that Spider-Man's going to be at the circus, so tickets are just selling like hotcakes at this point. But one thing he did not calculate, one thing that he miscalculated, as it shows right here, is that the real Spider-Man right here would find out. Peter Parker finds out that Spider-Man's supposed to come on the scene at this circus, and he thinks, well, it's probably for charity, so why not show up? Plus, if I perform in front of the audience, then maybe the audience will see that I'm not such a bad guy to begin with. We also see Betty Brant. She's been trying her best to set up a date with Peter Parker, but every time that she wants to set up a date with Peter Parker, he has something else to do. And so she says, I had this great recipe for spaghetti, and I thought maybe I could bring some spaghetti over to Aunt May's house, and y'all could eat. We can eat together or whatever. And then he said, oh, I can't. And then his ticket to go to the circus falls out of his pant pocket. She sees the circus ticket, and then she kind of concludes that, well, I guess you're going to go on your own, and if you don't want me there, you should have just told me. So that did not end well at all. And we also see that Matt Murdock finds out that Spider-Man's going to be performing at the circus, so that influences Matt Murdock to actually go with Foggy Nelson and Karen Page to the circus. So Matt Murdock and Karen Page and Foggy Nelson go to the circus. Peter Parker recognizes the blind man that he saw earlier today, but he doesn't suspect that's Daredevil. Peter Parker puts on his Spider-Man costume and gets ready to perform, and the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime has no idea that Spider-Man is actually going to show up. And then they're like, what? He showed up! And for the next couple of pages, we just see some of the great athletic abilities that Spider-Man performs here, and the audience is just captured. They're awed. They're like, oh my goodness, this is wonderful. Now the ringmaster's like, this is not going to get in my way. Spider-Man's not going to get in my way. All I got to do is hypnotize him, and that's exactly what he does. He hypnotizes Spider-Man right here, and he says, "My will is your will." That's the famous saying that the ringmaster uses to hypnotize Spider-Man as well as the people. Now everyone is hypnotized except for one man, and that is Matt Murdock. Remember, Matt Murdock is blind, so the hypnosis had no effect on Matt Murdock. And so Matt Murdock recognizes through all the heartbeats around him that something has gone amiss. So he escapes unannounced, changes to Daredevil, and we see right here that Daredevil is going to have a fight on his hands. So Daredevil has to fight Spider-Man because remember, Spider-Man is under the willpower of the Ringmaster. So we see a great battle here between Spider-Man and Daredevil. Just page after page of pure action. That's all I can say right here by Steve Ditko. This is one of the few times I haven't looked at Daredevil yet in his own magazine, but I'm pretty sure Jack Kirby drew Daredevil. I could be wrong, but in this issue, Steve Ditko drew Daredevil, and he drew him pretty good. You can tell me in the comments down below, did Jack Kirby draw Daredevil, or was it Steve Ditko? I can't tell you, but I'm sure someone down below can tell me. So Daredevil and Spider-Man duke it out, and finally Daredevil grabs a hold of the Ringmaster's hat and unhypnotizes or breaks the spell for Spider-Man, and Spider-Man comes to his senses. Ringmaster decides, alright, we got 2 people on our hands and we got about 6 of us. We can surely take them on. But to no avail, we see some great stuff. Daredevil and Spider-Man team up together. So for the first time in a Spider-Man title, you see 2 heroes actually team up together. But Daredevil sees that Spider-Man can take on these people on his own, so Daredevil turns back, or takes off his Daredevil disguise and changes back to Matt Murdock. So he just listens the whole entire time while Spider-Man fights off these people. These people are no challenge to Spider-Man. These are just ordinary guys with athletic abilities compared to a guy with spider-like abilities. Who's going to win? The guy with spider powers. So that's exactly what we see here. Some great artwork again by Steve Ditko. We even see this guy named Gambino try to be launched out of a rocket launcher, and that didn't work at all. Spider-Man finally gets a hold of the Ringmaster. Ringmaster tries to use the same trick on Spider-Man, but it doesn't work because Spider-Man closes his eyes under his mask, and then boom, right there, one big old punch knocks out the Ringmaster, and that pretty much wraps up the action for this issue. And the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime are webbed up, and they're going to jail. And Spider-Man uses the Ringmaster's hat to unhypnotize everybody in the audience. They wake up, and they don't know that anything that had just occurred happened. They just know that Spider-Man put on an awesome act. And so Spider-Man watches the crime masters go into the police vehicle, and that is pretty much the end of this issue. Hope y'all enjoyed this review. Go ahead and like this video, and if you have not already, go ahead and like this video. Comment down below what you like about this issue, and subscribe if you have not, and I will see you in the next review.